In this video, we're going to be doing a pencil sketch of the Eiffel Tower. We'll be using a few of the techniques we learned in the last tutorial to put this picture together. To start, you'll need a piece of paper, 2 pencils, a light one, like an HB or a B. This is for planning out the outlines of our drawing. And then a darker pencil. Any B pencil is fine. I'm using a 4B. You'll also need a ruler and an eraser. Right, let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is fold the page in half long ways. Now you don't have to do the fold all the way down the page, so you can just pinch the top of the page, pinch the bottom of the page. If you would prefer not to have a fold line on your page, you can measure it out. It's just much faster to fold the page in half. What we're going to do next is line our rulers up with the bottom of the page. My ruler ends right at the end of it, so I know that if it's flat against the bottom of the page and lined up with my top and bottom fold, my line is going to be perfectly straight. Now for this picture, accuracy is quite important, otherwise it can look a little bit off center and not right. So getting these first few measurements correct goes a long way in helping your picture look really good at the end. So we're going to measure off 5 places up the ruler. Our first measurement is 5 centimeters. So I'm using my HB pencil, just making a light mark at 5 centimeters, 10 centimeters, 15, and then 25 centimeters, a little bit further up. Okay, now these marks are going to be the platforms of the tower, and the first mark will be the ground line. So let's start with the ground line. That was the 5 centimeter that we marked off here. We're going to put our line there. Again, I'm lining up my ruler till the end of the page so that I get a nice straight line, and draw our line across. So we have the ground line. Now we're going to work on the platforms. If we look at this finished picture, it will help us. So we've drawn this ground line. Now we're going to draw the 3 platforms that go up the tower. So the first platform is at the 5 centimeter mark. It should be 6.5 centimeters long. Now it sounds tricky at the moment, but it's going to make your picture look really good at the end. So just bear with me and listen carefully. It's 6.5 centimeters. We want to make this the center of it. So it's going to be about 3.25 centimeters. That's on the center line here. So 3.25 centimeters on that side, 3.25 centimeters on that side. If you're working in inches, I can tell you that's about 2.5 inches, that line. Okay, this is going to be a rectangle, and we're going to make the rectangle 1 centimeter high. So I'm just marking off 1 centimeter. I'm marking it off in the middle, and then I'm drawing my lines on either side. This just helps with accuracy. You can check it against your previous measurements. Right, so we've done our first platform. Now we're going on to our second platform. This platform, it needs to be narrower. As we go up the tower, the platforms get narrower and narrower. So this one's going to be 4 centimeters, much easier to divide. So we'll have 2 centimeters on each side of the center line. 2 centimeters and 2 centimeters. And again, we're going to make it 1 centimeter high. So I'm just making a marker here to make sure I keep it accurate. One centimeter on that side, 1 centimeter on this side. And we close off our. Try not to press too hard when you're doing this. If we make a mistake, we need to make it easy to rub out. So press lightly so that you can erase it easily. Right, our final one is right at the top there. That's 2 centimeters. So it will be 1 centimeter on each side of that center line, and also 1 centimeter high. If you're feeling confident, you could just eyeball this draw the 3 rectangles yourself, but it's nice if you're not feeling confident to know that you are getting all of the basics of the picture right. Okay, so we have the 3 platforms of our tower now. What we're going to do now is add these 3 platforms together. To do that, we need to find the base of our tower. So from our center line here, we're going to measure 5.5 centimeters out on either side of it. So what I've done is on my center mark, I've put it on 5.5 centimeters, then I know that's where the first leg is going to come from. And then I'm going to measure it up with my center line again, 5.5 centimeters on that side. Now what we're going to do is join this mark up to our first platform, and it should be a slightly curved line. I'm going to turn my page so that my hand is more comfortable, and I'm going to start just inside the first platform and bring it down. And then on the other side, try and match the shape of the curves. You are doing the same measurements, so it should stay the same. Right, and then we're going to do the inside leg of this. Again, it's about 1 centimeter. Bring it up to the first platform, and on this side, bring it up to the first platform. Right, then we're going to go to our second platform, and again joining it from the first platform, move it up to the second platform. Bring it in a little bit. So I've done it right from the edge, and that's actually not correct. We want to come just a little bit in from the edge. Make it curve up to the next platform. And again, about 1 centimeter in, try and make these 2 lines as parallel as possible. Have had students before use a protractor, a compass, to make sure that they got them right. Okay, and then we're joining the second platform up to our third and final platform. This one's a bit trickier because it's much longer, and it is a bit skinnier, so they're going to overlap the 2 lines. Don't worry if it's not looking perfect. As you add your shading in, it will make a big difference. This is just planning out our picture. Okay, so as you can see, there's a bit of an overlap at the top. Don't worry about that too much. We'll fix it with shading. Right, so we have the basic outline of our Eiffel Tower now. We're going to start adding some details in. So the next detail that we'll be adding in is the arch that's at the bottom. Right, don't start from the ground. Start slightly higher, about 1 centimeter. That's my rule for this picture, about 1 centimeter for everything. Draw the arch up till you get to the center line, then drop it back down to the other side. And then there's a second arch there. You can see the shading is different in this picture between the 2 arches. So we're going to draw a second arch line about 1 centimeter higher, or about halfway. Try and follow the shape of the arch that you've drawn below. Okay, now this arch, it's actually a series of lights. So the way that we're going to show these lights is just by shading in the dark areas around them. But the lights are different in the 2 arches, so we need to show these differences. So what we're going to do now is add in 4 light arches in the bottom part and 4 light arches in the second part. Okay, just draw them really lightly, follow the line that you've got there. So that's my first one. 1, 2, 3. And then in the top part we're going to do another 4. Will be 3 lines and 4 arches. 4 sections. Okay, so we've drawn the lines for the arches. Now we're going to block these off. Start with your center line because you know that that is straight up. Then kind of go halfway between the center and the edge of the pole and draw to that corner up there. On the other side, halfway between the center line and the edge, draw it up to the first corner. Okay, and each of these sections can be divided into 2 again. Into 3, sorry, 2 lines. If it looks like you need some more space, just add an extra line. It kind of creates like a spider's web pattern. Now to shade this in, you're going to use your B pencil or a darker pencil. If you don't have a darker pencil, you'll just have to press much darker. So our first set of shading will be quite dark. Don't color all the way till the edge of the square. So we're just doing a dark scribble inside each of these squares. This will be the first 4 arches at the bottom. This is a hatching technique that we're using in these squares. You're going to make the top 4 arches a little bit darker, and we're going to do slightly different shading. So we're coloring it in, not pressing as hard. For this top arch, we're coloring it in, but also shading in the top and the left hand side of the rectangle darker. So we'll do an L shape and then do some slightly lighter coloring on the inside. So do that for each of these little blocks. The left side, the top side, and some slightly lighter shading. This just creates a little bit of interest and makes it look different. Again, the style of shading that we're using is hatching. Some of your rectangles won't be perfect squares. Just shade them a little bit darker to show that they're in the corner and they're in shadow. So you won't be able to do the left hand and top of all of these blocks, because they are not perfect rectangles. Just a really simple technique to show that there's some lights in this arch. These ones at the top, I'm just doing the top of the block and the left-hand side of the block and some dark shading. We'll come back to this later when we're finishing off our picture and add in a bit of darker shading around the edge. Right, now we're going to move on to shading the legs of the tower. We're just going to start with a simple crisscross pattern because the Eiffel Tower is made of, it's got cross bracing in it. So we're just representing each of those blocks. I've added a little bit of a curve to it. If you make these crosses just straight crosses, so if you just make it a straight line, it's not going to look as realistic. You need to have a curve in the line. The straight lines will make it look flat. So just droop the middle of the line a little bit. Try and make the 2 sides as similar as possible, so they should have the same number of crosses on each side. Right, then our second platform, or our second set of legs, we're going to do slightly different shading. We'll start again with the crisscross. Again, not a straight line, that's just going to make the picture look flat. Do a curved line. This one I've done 3 crosses. Doesn't matter if you end up with more crosses, just as long as you keep both sides the same. Then inside each of these crosses, we're going to draw a diamond shape and shade it in. Try not to make this too perfect or precise. This is quite a loose drawing, and if you leave a bit of white showing like that, it gives you the impression of twinkling lights. So don't worry about shading it in perfectly. We're also going to do these edges here, so that will just be a triangle. Just drawing the triangle, shading in the square. Again, if there's a little bit of white showing like that, just makes it look a bit more alive, like a light twinkling. And now we're going to move on to our top platform. Now for this platform, I've used very light crosses, come out a little bit, so about 1 centimeter blocks, because the cross bracing on a building would actually, it wouldn't just be crosses, you would also have blocks between it. So if we were drawing a technical drawing of the Eiffel Tower, it would have blocks with crosses in it to show the cross bracing. Okay, but we want to show that there's lights shining and it's nighttime. So when we draw it, we're just going to draw these very light crosses, and up the sides we'll just give the illusion of lights coming or lines coming out between the cross bracing. Okay, to show that the lights are on and it's bright and we can just see a little bit of the frame. It's easier to start with your crosses, but I don't want you to press as hard as you were at the bottom. Press really lightly for these crosses, because as the two poles or struts come together, there's going to be a lot of light at the top there. So we should just see a little bit of the structure coming through. So don't press too lightly. And in fact, in some of the things, you don't even have to do the full cross. You can see here I'm just doing sections of the cross. Now, we're going to go on the edge of the tower and just do lines coming in at the end of each cross. Try and make each line slightly different, a different length. Some of them might just come out a little bit, some of them might come out a lot. If you make them all uniform, it can look a little bit stiff and boring. Oh, I haven't lined those ones up very well. Let's erase that. Okay, what I'm going to do is I've found now that I've made the outlines a bit too dark compared to these crosses, so I'm just going to darken up some of the cross lines. Just adding a few more details, tying together these lines. Right. Next we're going to look at the shading on each of these platforms. So for the bottom platform, we're going to do blocks. I've done 7 blocks here, and that looks like a good proportion or size for the length of the platform. So start on your center line and draw your first block, and then you just draw 3 on either side. Try and space them out as equally as possible. You might find that after you've drawn them, you'll need to change the size of them. So mine are looking very square, and it's actually more of a rectangular shape. So I'm just going to lengthen them a little bit. And similar to the shading below them, we're going to color in this block. Again, if you leave a little bit of white showing through, it looks nicer, it looks more natural. This block is a little bit off center. There's too much space between these 2 blocks, and then those 2 are too close together. So I'm just going to erase that one and fix it. When you press lightly, it's very easy to just erase a mistake. Okay, Okay, and then again we're going to add a shadow on the left hand side and across the top. And then just a nice little bit of shading around the edges of it, make it slightly darker on the edges. Right, our second platform, we're showing some cross bracing again and a little bit of dark shading along the top of it. So start with the cross bracing. I've done 5 crosses, so again do the first cross down the center fold and then 2 crosses on each side of it will help you with the spacing. So this middle one's got a cross, 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 and then 2 crosses on this side. And the light up here, we're going to do some scribbling, pressing quite hard, so it looks like light shining down, light shining around it. So if we draw just a rectangle, it doesn't show the light, but these scribbly lines, it gives the impression of light shining on it. Okay, we're gonna again give it a little bit of a shading around the outside. I'm gonna darken my crosses now that I'm happy with them. Right, and then our top platform has just got 2 rectangles on it. And it's actually a cylinder. So instead of having this straight line, I'm just gonna make a bit of a curve. And you could add a bit of darker shading on the outside if you wanted to, make it lighter. And then do our 2 blocks that are windows. And we're gonna shade them in quite dark. Right, now that we've done this final platform, we're just going to add the spire to the top of the tower. Interesting fact that the Eiffel Tower is actually a radio tower. Well, it was built as a radio tower to transmit radio signals, so that's why it has a spire. Right, so we're going to draw the spire up about 1 centimeter. And it's got an arrow. It's almost just like an arrow really that you're drawing at the top. It looks a little out of place now, but when we add the shading into the background, it will all blend in and look good. Right, what we're going to work on next are these street lights that are coming on the street below the Eiffel Tower and the road. So it's actually easier to start with the pavement and the road. You're going to need your ruler and your lighter pencil, your HB, your H. Our first measurement, we're going to draw the edge of the pavement, and it's going to be from the outside leg of your tower to the corner of your page. So just draw that line down, and on the other side too, line it up with the outside leg and the corner of your page, and draw your line. This is a quick way to make sure your picture is symmetrical. What I like to do then is just line my ruler up with this page and make my pavement as wide as my ruler. This is a really fast way to make sure you get a perfectly parallel line. So I've lined it up, and then I'm just going to draw that line. Now the next thing that we're going to do is draw our markers for our street lights. So we've added in our pavement now and our road. These street lights, as they get further away or closer to the tower, they're getting smaller. So that's the rule of perspectives. When things are far away, they look small, and when they're closer, they look larger. You can measure maybe 10 centimeters from your ground line and make a little mark at the edge of your page. And on the other side, 10 centimeters up from your ground line. And then from this center to the edge of the page, just draw a really light line. And this is going to help us work out how big to make each of our street lamps. So you need one on each side because there's street lamps on both sides of the road. Now we're going to use the edge of the road for our street lamps. So our street lamps will be on the pavement. And we can measure them to make them nice distances apart. They're not going to be equal distances apart because of the perspective rule. So from the ground line, on this line, we'll mark off 1 centimeter, 3 centimeters, and 6 centimeters. And those will be the markers for our street lamps. And then we can just draw a line straight up to the one that we drew just now. On the other side, again, it's going to be 1, 3, and 6 centimeters from the ground line. So 1, 3, 6, and draw lines straight up. If you've kept your measurements accurate, they should be in very similar spots on each side. If you want to, you could add a fourth street lamp. Just make it about a ruler's distance away, and it will go off the bottom of the page, so we won't see the bottom of it. Right, then we can shade these street lamps in. They're going to be poles. Let's make them darker on one side and slightly lighter on the other side. I'm using my 4B to shade these in because it's nice and dark. So draw a darker line first and a slightly lighter line next to it. As the lines get longer, it gets a bit trickier to keep it nice and straight, but street lamps are straight, so try your best to keep that line nice and straight. So we're just going to finish this fourth street lamp. As they get closer, they should be bigger, so you could make them even a little bit fatter. Each line could be fatter than the previous one. And a bit more detail. So those ones, I just did a dark line and a light one, but this one that's close, I would probably try and finish it off a bit more. Right, and then you just do the same on the other side. Dark line and a light line. As you're doing this, check the line that you made on the other side of the page. Make sure that the thickness is roughly the same, and thin out any lines that you need to. Okay, what we're going to do now is shade in the pavement and the road. So we'll just use a mixture of smooth shading and hatching on this. Start with the outside one because it's nice and easy, and then you can move into the center ones. All of them, it's dark on the horizon, and they'll get light as they move closer. Okay, so I'm going to start on this outside line here. Nice dark line along the edge. And I'm just drawing straight lines, lighten it as I get out. If you wanted to, you could make this smoother by just rubbing your finger over it. So I'm going to make it smoother just so that there's a difference between the grass on the outside, the pavement, and the road. We want them to each have slightly different textures. I'm also adding a little bit of shading along this line here. It shouldn't be as dark as the horizon. Then let's do the the grass on the other side. Again, a really nice dark line along the horizon. Just hatching. Keep an eye on how you shaded on the other side. So try and make sure that you're getting light at the same time. And again, a bit of dark shading along the edge of the pavement. Okay, if you're not happy with how the shading's looking, rub your finger over it to soften it, and then you can erase it. Always go back and check. So is the shading graded the same? Mine is not. This is quite dark, and that needs to be darkened more. So you need to just take a step back and look at your picture as you're going through it. Check each thing, each section of the picture. Right, let's do the pavement next. What I'm going to do is add a second line in here, so it's almost like a little wall. And add a bit of dark shading along the bottom of this wall. Dark shading on the horizon. Can get a bit tricky with the street lamps. Just draw a line over them, and you can always erase it and lighten it later. Okay, it's going to be quite light at the base of the street lamps because of the light that they're casting on the pavement. So make sure you do nice light shading below the street lamps. Drawing a second line there to really make it look like a wall. Okay, and then we're going to go onto the right hand side, start at the horizon. Nice dark shading. Lift your pencil up off the page and press lighter and lighter. Remember to leave some shading near the street lamps. Leave some light, sorry, not some shading. Okay, and make it a bit darker on the edge of the pavement. Don't be afraid to do a few bold lines that don't blend in with the rest of it. It can make a picture look a lot more alive. Okay, just make sure you've got a nice dark line there so that you can see that there is a difference between the two. The pavement and the grass. I've done the pavement in a slightly rougher texture with hatching, and I did the grass really smooth, so it makes a picture more interesting, especially a pencil sketch, if you use different textures. Okay, I'd like to lighten underneath my lampposts a bit more, so I'm just going with my eraser, lightening it up. Right, then we're going to do our road. So there's usually a little bit of a dip between the pavement and the road, or a ridge, the pavement slightly higher. So we need to show that with a bit of dark shading. And the horizon will also be dark, the horizon line. When you shade things dark, it pushes them back, and when you make them lighter, it pulls them forward. So that's why a horizon will always be darker. To give the illusion of depth. Okay. If you wanted to, you could test a little bit of stippling on the road, again, just to make a different texture. So I'm going to do some shading and add in a bit of stippling. So it creates a tar-like texture. don't have to do that, that's optional. Right, what we're going to do now is add in the shading in the background. So you can see there's a lot of cross-hatching happening in the background. The crosses are much closer on the inside of the tower, and then it's quite dark around the tower just to make the tower really stand out, and it gets lighter as you go to the edge of the page. You can see lots of little bits of white in between here, and that's also to create the illusion of nighttime with lots of little lights flickering in the background. Once we've shaded in the entire background, we're going to use our eraser and just rub out lights shining from the tops of the street lamps. So don't worry about those just yet. Okay, the one thing that you need to be careful of is you don't want to do a big fat line over the tower that you've just drawn. So shade very carefully around the edge of the tower and get a nice crisp clean line, and then do your cross hatching after that. So I'm going to start at the base of the tower here. This is probably going to be the darkest part of the picture, and although I'm doing cross hatching, I'm making it quite dark and close together. We've done street lamps here, so you want to leave a little bit of white on the edge of the street lamp just so that it stands out. So I'm just going to draw a line next to it here, and then make sure that I don't color in that line, just so that the street lamp is still kind of clear. We don't want it to be totally lost in this dark shading. Again, a few little pockets of lights are fine, because we do want to have some lights twinkling in the darkness, but it should be quite dark at this bottom bit here. Okay, let's color in this next section. Now it will be slightly lighter in this section. Again, draw your dark lines around the edge of the tower so that we have a nice crisp outline of the tower. It's almost like outlining something before you color it in. And then do your hatching inside there. Again, they're going to be quite close together and dark lines, because we want it to be fairly dark so that the tower doesn't get lost in the background. You can see that I'm moving the page around so that my hand is always comfortable and I have lots of control over my pencil. Right, and finally this top section, again, go around the edge of the tower, making a nice crisp outline, and then fill in with your cross hatching hard, close together. There's no lighter tones, it's all the same dark tone in the middle. Okay, now we're going to go on to shading the background. We're going to start nice and dark against the tower and then get lighter as we go to the edge of the page. I'm going to turn my page sideways. Again, I don't want to have a big cross line along there, but I'm going to do a little bit of an outline, and I'm making my cross hatching follow the shape of the tower. Okay, and now you're going to work on, it's called gradation, making it lighter and lighter as you come out. You can do it in little chunks like this, but don't go too far. So do maybe this much and then move to the next section, because if you just shade this whole section to the edge of the page, you're going to battle to match the next one to it. So I'm going to go here and again do my dark shading, following the curve of the tower. Blending the two together. Doing quite large hatches here. You can see it's not small hatches. Okay, and now I'm going to do this bottom leg here. Be aware of the street lamps, because you don't want to lose them and not know where to rub out or erase. So I'm just leaving a little bit there, a little bit of space around the edge of the light so that I can see it later. This picture lends itself to some untidy colouring in, so you don't need to be worried about making it absolutely perfect. It looks actually nicer if it's a little bit, it's called a loose style of drawing. It's kind of a bit more relaxed. Just keep working it, going over the lines and making it blend nicely. Okay, and we're going to blend it out to a light white at the edge of the page. Making it a little bit darker on the horizon as well. So the lighter spot is almost the top edges. Again, just to make it look further away and give it depth. So I'm going to use my eraser now. Don't make a perfect circle for the light. Just kind of rub in a circular shape. If it's a perfect circle, it doesn't look right, because light doesn't spray out in perfect circles. Okay, and don't forget this little one that's in front of the tower here. Again, because it's further away, it won't shine as bright, so your one that's closest to the edge of the page will be the biggest, brightest one, and they can get slightly smaller as they get closer to the tower. Right, let's go to the other side of the picture. I'm turning my page around so that my hand is nice and comfortable and I have control over it. Follow the shape. This is another important thing when you're shading in a large area. If you are drawing on a table that's got texture, or even just the little bits from your eraser, it can affect your shading. You can counteract this by pressing on something like a book or a couple of sheets of paper or a drawing pad. But if you've just got a sheet of paper on a desk, sometimes the texture from the desk will show through in your shading. Something to be aware of. Okay, and then getting lighter, nice big bold lines. Don't be scared when you're shading in the background. Right, I'm going to go down to this bottom bit here. And be aware of these lines. Don't forget about your street lamps. You don't want to lose them in your shading and forget about them. Some nice dark shading around the edge of the tower. And along the horizon line, press nice and hard. Don't have to worry about making the shading perfectly symmetrical, because the lights in the city won't be perfectly symmetrical. So if it's slightly different on the one side, it won't look too strange. But the idea should be the same, that they're getting lighter towards the outside. Pretty much just scribbling on a page now until you are done. Okay, again, before you forget where your street lights are, erase the lights from the top. Not a perfect circle, just kind of a blob going a couple of different directions, almost scribbling with your eraser. And remember, the ones at the back will be smaller, and then the ones near the edge of the page will be a bit bigger. All right, let's do the top now. To scribble quite carefully around the spire, we want it to still be visible, the aerial or antenna. And then just follow the shading that you've used for the rest of the page. Looks quite nice if you just leave a bit of white also on the edges of the page. It is important though that you have dark shading around the tower so that it stands out. So just have a look at your page again once you're done and make sure that the shading around the tower makes the tower stand out. It's called emphasis. It's one of the design principles of art. Right, when you're getting close to ending a picture, you need to just have a look at it, see where you need to finish things off. If something's not looking quite right, you go back and fix that. So I'm just gonna go over these lines again. Maybe a bit of a shading in these sections to make the poles stand out. So a little bit of shading under each platform so that it stands out a little bit. This is just some nice soft blending. You can even use your finger if you wanted. Right, if you wanted to finish off your picture with some people or a car, you could just do really simple shapes, a circle, a rectangle, some legs. These are really just very simple people. It's not detailed at all. Or you could put a little car on the road if you would like. And that's it, our Eiffel Tower pencil sketch. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments below. And if you are interested in learning more drawing skills, watch our next video on how to use a grid.